right, here we go. Hi everyone, or no one's here yet. Let's see. I'm trying today to lower the output so that hopefully we have a little bit better stream quality, although it still seems to be flickering a bit. Oh, hi Oki. We're just trying to get things set up here. I'm hoping the video will catch up with the audio. So I had hoped this stream would be actually a live unboxing because I had fish due to come in last night and the post office hates me. So, you know, you're putting in your information in the ship to address. I'm sure it's my fault. And I entered my address wrong by one digit. One little digit. So instead of putting, yeah, okay, I think the video will catch up in a minute or two, but it's just looking at me, so it's not really that exciting. As long as you can hear me, that's really the main part of, I think, the live stream, since I don't have any fish to show you today. If I had had my box with my new babies in it, I would have had something to show you, but evidently it's lost in the mail. So I ordered see, HC Aqua, you're driving, so you don't even need to see the cruddy video quality. So you can just listen. So I ordered some shrimp from Flip Aquatics, and it's totally my fault. You know, I just moved. I'm pretty sure what my address is most of the time, but I entered instead of 10163, I entered 10162, and so the post office, in all their wisdom, sent it back. But before they sent it back, I put in a request to hold it at the post office for pickup, which of course I didn't do. But now they're saying instead of the fish going straight back to Flip Aquatics, it may get redirected back to me at some point, which is just crazy. And I can't imagine them really doing well if they're bouncing back and forth across the country for a week. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But meanwhile, I spent 2 hours this morning driving to all the post office in my area, because when I put in the hold request, it said it would be held at the Seven Hills post office. And they're like, we've never had this package on site. And so then they gave me an address to another post office that I had to go to. And they were very helpful, and they looked everywhere, but the gal talked to the driver and said, oh no, he sent it right back after he got off. So I guess they have a return bin. So it probably was on its way back before they even notified me that it was attempted delivery. So that's really unfortunate, because I really want my shrimp. And now I've already talked to Rob, and he's like, you know, we'll fix it, we'll make it right. But it's just, in the meantime, trying to figure out where they are and if the little critters will live through this experience. You know, I just feel bad for the shrimp, like they're being unnecessarily tortured in the shipping process. But my backup plan today was to talk about some of the stuff that I feed my fish, since we aren't going to look at new live shrimp, and I have a whole bunch of of different foods that I feed. And I think that's like if I was to give one piece of advice about feeding is lots of variety. You know, don't just feed the same flake every day. You know, flakes can be fine, but you want to make sure that you're feeding a bunch of different things. That said, I never feed flake food because most of the time I find it really makes my water cloud up. So until recently, I was feeding almost exclusively, when it comes to dry food, the New Life Spectrum brand. But my fish have really been liking lately the Fluval Bug Bites. They are just over the moon about that. Like the feeding behavior is completely changed and, you know, improved quite a bit. Yeah, okay. I know. I don't think it's going to be if something happens to the shrimp in the shipping process, it's not going to be because of Rob's fault. It's going to be just the sheer time that they're lost in the mail, because at this point they're just completely lost in the mail. So yeah, the bug bites. Mainly I feed. Let's see if I can show this. The tropical formula. And in this one, it has a really small granule size. It does have some variety in the granules. But what I like about it is that it works for just about any fish I have. So the Corys will eat it. The Tetras can eat it. It's small enough for them. It's actually even small enough for my baby rainbow fry, which are about like this long now, this big now. You know, so they've been eating it for a while, which is nice because before this, I was feeding the New Life Spectrum Grow formula. And now I keep these tins and I mix foods. And that's one thing I'll say is like almost every container of these has a variety of different foods in them. Because like I said, I don't feed just one thing. But I was feeding the Grow to almost all my animals because of their really small mouths, like especially the rainbow fish. You know, they're a big fish, but they have these little tiny mouths and really tiny throats. And if they take a bite of something too big, they can actually choke to death, which is terrible. So the Grow was really nice, and it worked great for growing the Corys and helping the rainbows grow and everything. But something recently, they must have changed their formula because these were supposed to be sinking 0.5 millimeter pellets, and they just got bigger. Like, I mean, maybe a fifth of a millimeter just got larger. But it was starting to be a problem for some of my Tetras. Couldn't eat them; they were too big. So what's really nice about the tropical formula on the bug bites is that it does have a variety of sizes, but it's like crumbly, so it's easy to like just crumble it in if you have really tiny fish. So if I'm feeding like the baby Corys, I can do that. And then I just ordered new one. I'm going to open it up here. Yeah. And this is the bottom feeder formula because again for Corys, and it has a nice granule size. I don't know if you can see that. You know, chunks, but soft, and that's what I like about the food. Even it breaks up easily, but it also doesn't cloud the water while it's just sitting and floating in there. Because like these are, so this is like one of my mixes. It's like some Hikari micro fish food, and then it's mostly the bug bites. And then it looks like a little bit left over of the 0.5 millimeter Grow formula. And this is what I've been feeding the Cory Rainbow Fry Grow Out tank. So they've been eating that. So New Life Spectrum has a couple different formulas. The the Grow is a sinking pellet, so it does sink pretty much right away as long as the water tension on the top of the water breaks up. But then they have another one that I specifically buy when I have betas because it does float. Because like mostly betas want to eat off the surface, although they will go chase the through the water. So I mean, before I've switched to almost the Fluval Bug Bites for dry, almost completely. However, it is expensive, so I mix it in with other. I mean, it's not like New Life Spectrum or some of the other dry foods that I feed are cheap dry foods because New Life Spectrum's a good brand. They use good ingredients. It's just the pellet size is just a little too big. So it's fine if I'm using some of the larger ones for sinking foods. But yeah, you're right. Some of them do take a little longer to sink. Although the Algae Max wafers, now this one was hard to find for about half a year. So I don't know, they were reformulating something, or they just sold out and they were having problems with their manufacturer. I don't know. But for the longest time, I couldn't find the wafers because the Cories and the Plecos love them. They're, about a little over an inch to half an inch, quarter inch thick. And they usually sink right to the bottom, and they do absorb water and soften up after. But it's algae, chlorophyll, seaweed, red seaweed, kelp, spirulina, seaweed, and then krill. So it's actually an algae tablet, because a lot of times you'll see something marketed as an algae tablet, and it'll have fish meal as the first ingredient. And my algae eaters need to eat algae-based foods with protein. So I really do like that one. But I also, since I've been trying the New Life Spectrum, got the Pleco formula. And these ones are a little different. Let's open this one up. So I use this one in my bottom feeder mix. So I have just a jar of the algae because that's easy enough to feed in one piece because you pull it out. If I can open this package. No, the tear thing didn't tear low enough. So these ones come in, they're like little sticks. You can see there's the little sticks. At first I didn't think this is my second bag, so it does work. But at first I didn't think the Cories really liked them as much, and then I actually saw them eating them. There was a algae wafer, and then there was, a Pleco stick right next to it, and the Cories were right on the Pleco stick. But this might be a Pleco formula for medium and large fish, but it is protein-based food. So it's black soldier fly larvae, salmon, wheat, pea protein, potatoes, and then some vitamins and minerals. So, this one is mostly algae, and this one is mostly proteins. So it's not that one is better than the other, they're just different. And when the fish need some proteins, they go for this one, and when they're in the craving for their veggie matter, they go here. I mean, generally, I feed this one only a couple times a week, and I feed this one almost every day, just because of that, the fact that most of those plecos, they'd rather eat the candy over here, but they need the algae. Yeah, they do. I mean, okay, my plecos and my Cories and the snails, well, snails love anything I put in the tank, but yeah, they really do go for this one. So it's packed full of good protein. It's just that I also need to balance that out for, a fish that's an omnivore should have both. Just like, we'd prefer eating steak and potatoes all the time, but we really do need that salad on the side or the broccoli. So, you know, I have been impressed. I mean, this is my second bag, and like I said, I just got the bottom feeder one because I wanted to try a different grain size, although I think this will be better. The bottom feeder formula for small and medium fish will be better for feeding the little Cories, and I'll probably mix this in with the Cory fry tank dry food mix versus like putting in a stick. I think if I put this in my 75, what'll happen is it'll just blow and get caught under things or, you know, in the plants. And it's and not that the fish won't find it eventually. It's just that I'm worried that it'll decompose more than you want it to before they're actually eating it. But it is nice that they have the size options. Although if I was to ask anything, could we please get the tropical formula in a bigger container? Because even this is kind of small for how much I feed this. I go through at least one of these a month. So, like, I really, like, it's become a staple food in my house, and I would love it in a bigger size container. Another really fun food for them is we get the treat tabs, the spirulina O-nibs. These are really great for the Cory fry, a little bit bigger Cory fry, because they soften up and start to break apart, and the Cories can nibble on them over the day. They have a really high protein. Their protein is 45, where even the Pleco bites are 32. So they have a nice high protein level for baby growth. The rainbow fry, love them because they can pick on them and it dissolves really fine. The tetras adore these. I don't feed them to my big tank very often, but when I do, the tetras go like mad happy with it. So, okay, you're asking, speaking of veggies, do you feed your tank any balanced blanched vegetables? Yes, yes. So I'm just talking about dry right now, but I've got freeze-dried, I've got frozen, I've got Repashy, powder foods. I feed a slew of things. That's what I'm like. Feeding can be a whole topic just because I feed so much variety, and I think that's really important. I owe in my Plecos over here, right behind me. They get blanched zucchini, which the 3 Plecos and the butterfly loaches can just skin a Pleco or skin a zucchini overnight. They actually like to eat the skin, and then they'll eat the inside as well. All of them go into it. Hi, Matthew. Yeah, the Cory's new setup's pretty sweet. They're really having fun in the 75, and the little 5-gallon is exciting, although my fish didn't come for it today, which is sad. But so back to feeding. Yeah, I feed the blanched vegetables. My Plecos are veggie snobs, and they really don't like anything but zucchini. Like, I've tried cucumber, and they'll nibble at it, but mostly I end up pulling out a lot of gross, mushy zucchini or cucumber. I've tried the green beans, and they literally don't touch them. And it's so funny because Steenfot feeds green beans, Aquarium Co-op feeds green beans. All these people, like, their Plecos, all their fish nibble at them. If I put green beans in any of my tanks, they just sit there, and my fish are like, get this junk out of my tank. So I just don't, I mean, I stopped bothering because, I mean, it's just polluting the tank if they don't eat those green beans pretty much right away. So maybe if I ever get baby Plecos, I might try green beans again because it's kind of pre-blanched, mushy, ready to eat. But my bristlenose seem to like a pretty firm vegetable. So what I do with my zucchini is I just generally I take a regular, like, small, medium-sized zucchini, slice it in half, microwave it for 45 seconds, and of course my fish only get organic food. They get organic zucchinis. I always say I feed them better than me. And then those zucchinis, I just stab a fork in and drop them into the tank, and usually the next day they're pretty much gone. And so they get those. They should get them more often, but they get them about once a week because I get one at the grocery store every time I go. So they do get their fresh veggies, and I've tried like broccoli rabe, and I've tried melons and stuff, and they'll nibble on them, but they just attack their zucchinis. Like, they love them. But one reason, since I'm maybe not feeding the zucchini as much as I would like, is I've started, like I said, I'm making sure that I have the like algae tablets that are actually algae based, and then some of the Repashis, and they've been going nuts over that. Yeah, Matthew. I say that about my cat too, because she gets like duck freeze dried cat food. It costs like $100 a month for just her cat food, and I'm just like, I mean, I eat healthy, but I don't even think I eat that well. Not that I'd want to eat freeze-dried duck, just that she has like the best cat cuisine she can get. The bird's the only one that eats junk food. So speaking of other foods to replace veggies, so I've been using. It was actually a New Life Spectrum brand. They came out with gel food a year or so ago, and I think they were trying to push that. It was also at the same time that you couldn't get the wafers. Yeah, Nutrifink Health wafers are really good too. And yeah, mine go absolutely nuts over zucchini. Like, you put that in, and I mean, I have hold on. I have to block someone. Hi, Angelo. Well, I'm glad you could stop in. I know my work schedule is crazy. I only get one day that I can play with my fish and try to live stream, and I know it's a weird time. I mean, mid-morning, a lot of you guys are working. So I understand you can't hang out for long, but thanks for stopping in. But geez, I'm a real channel now. I had to block someone for spam. So one of the things is, so I've been using gel food for a while, but I was using the New Life Spectrum brand, and so I've been starting to try out some of the Repashis. And so I got the Soylent Green, and I have the Grow Repashi because I got that for the baby Cory fish. And the only thing I've noticed, and maybe it was just the Grow one, is it does kind of cloud up the tank as they eat it, but not too bad. Like I see a little, like, it's almost like a small bacteria bloom, and then it goes away and it's gone in a few hours. So I just don't know if it's messy and then my filter's cleaning it up. But it has the fish love it. I mean, especially the Corys, they are totally into the Repashi stuff. Yeah, Matthew, I'm a member of the Mac group on Google. I don't post much there. It groups a lot of Malawi cichlids, and I just not Malawi, yeah, the other lakes. I don't know. I like those fish. I just don't have them, so I often feel like I don't have a lot to contribute there. But yeah, I do belong to that group, and I follow what's going on. Yeah, it's I'm really bad at self-marketing, because I probably should like put this on the live stream page on I should share it on a bunch of the fish groups that I'm on that allow you to share your live streams. But I figure, like, people will notice or they don't. Otherwise, it saves me upload this week. Although I did upload last night. My internet at my house, as you can tell, the video quality isn't super great. And it's really kind of choppy. The internet just doesn't stream well here. It seems to be a Vegas-wide problem, no matter if you're with Cox or CenturyLink. But it's frustrating because it shouldn't be that hard to live stream. It shouldn't be that hard to upload a file, and it takes like, for like a 10-minute video, it takes literally a day for my computer to get it uploaded on the internet. So I would post more often, but it's such a pain. The cat's being demanding. So I'm interested to try. I got these 2 new types of Repashy. I got the Soylent Green, which everyone talks about as being really great, and it has very similar ingredients to the New Life Spectrum tablets. So that's I'm excited to try that for them. And then I got this one. It's called Bottom Scratchers, and it's designed for fish that would eat the insect larvae and microbacteria in like Orflux, whatever that word's called, on the stuff that grows on rocks. So it's krill, insect, mussels, squid. So it's got some nice, juicy, meaty ingredients in there. And I know I watched Rachel O'Leary's video on like her mixing foods, and she often like will combine these two and put like 2 parts veggie and 1 part of the meat. So she's like making custom mixes with them. And so I'm pretty excited to try that. And I also still have plenty of the Spawn and Grow, I think is what it's called, or something like that. The one for either conditioning your fish to spawn or to help grow out your fry. And so I've been using that with the baby Corys, and they love it because I can put in a chunk and then they can nibble at it all day, and it stays in there. I mean, they usually have it gone within 12 hours, but it can stay in there for a while, and that's nice because a lot of the live foods, if you feed, for instance, like brine shrimp, and they don't consume them quickly enough, then they die off and cause problems. So when it comes to live foods, I mostly just feed microworms to my fish, and actually a variety of my fish still eat microworms, even some of the adults. So the tetras will still eat microworms. Oh no! Okay. Oh. Is he too young to get his own phone, huh? All right, well, I'll see you in a little while, Matthew. So yeah, I do the microworms. Now, some people say that cultures smell real bad, and I don't notice they smell, but I feed my microworm cultures. And I did a video a while back on like making the food, the media to put them on, and then feeding. And basically they eat baby cereal, oatmeal, cream of wheat, that sort of thing. And so to me, they don't smell like anything at all. I did experiment because I saw someone who said that they fed their microworms flake food, and that stunk. So it was terribly smelly. So I think that had something to do with that meat ingredient, right? Because flake food still has powdered fish meal and stuff in it. And now maybe, I mean, I'm not a scientist and I don't have the way to prove this, but maybe saying like if you're topping the culture off with flake food instead of just more grain products, maybe that's creating a more higher protein worm. I'm not sure. But I also noticed that pretty close right after I tried the flake food in the culture, it went south really fast. Because my cultures, I don't usually do much to them except feed them for months at a time. And when I started feeding like the flake food in one of them, I mean, it was like a week, and I had to start the culture, like make up new media and then put in the starter culture again to keep it running. So I just don't think the worms like it either. So I feed the microworms to baby Cory fry, well, just baby anything really. And then also my tetras, like I said, they really like it. They still recognize that as a food. I even had some of my big rainbows see it, especially like, so when you're collecting it, you just kind of run your finger around the cup edge and you just shake your finger in the tank, and the rainbows would just come and they take big mouthfuls of the water that had high density saturation of the little microworms. And so they seem to like it too. I also used to have, and when I moved, I lost my cultures, which is unfortunate because like finding a good starter culture is always difficult. But I had white worms, which are about like this long and kind of look like a bloodworm, a defrosted bloodworm in size, but were live food. But they're non-aquatic worms, so they you grow them in damp soil, and then you can harvest them out. And the fish really did like that. The cichlids especially like those. The Maltese didn't. In all honesty, the Maltese are probably the trickiest cichlid I have to feed. Glaring at them over my shoulder because they're so little, but they like food that's actively moving around them. And so I think if I had a live food culture for them, the easiest thing to feed them would be like Daphnia, because one, it would live in the water volume for a while, and as it darted past them, they would grab it and eat it, and they would eat only like the ones that really fit in their mouth. So the live worms, they'll eat the microworms because those are small enough, and I feed that tank a lot, especially if I see fry. I'll feed them microworms so that the fry have little wormies to go after. And I mean, microworms are just a speck in the water. They're so tiny. But the white worms were too big for them, so they'd be like this long, and I mean the Maltese that long, and they just didn't recognize them as a food, or they didn't want to kind of go after them. They'd investigate them. They'd like go around and look at them, but they never really like chomped into them and ate them. So, yeah, but the pearly ocelotus, which are like 2 or 3 times bigger, they'd eat the white worms like crazy. So, and the rainbow fish love them, but like I said, those cultures didn't make the trip. Got too hot and they just died out, which makes a smelly mess. That's the only problem with live food cultures. I don't hatch my own brine shrimp. I've done it in the past, and I've never gotten so good at it that I get a really good hatch rate. And it seems more pain than it's worth with the fish that I raise. So, for instance, if I was doing killifish fry again, I would probably reattempt hatching brine shrimp because they need that little thing darting in the water to like instinctively get their prey drive going. But the Cory fry are such little scavengers, just like their parents, that they're happy to just tootle around the water, and so frozen baby brine works fine. Now, granted, frozen baby brine is exponentially more expensive than hatching your own brine shrimp, but it also takes 0 time, right? I have it in my freezer. I pop a cube into the tank, and they're good. They've got their breakfast. A lot of times, once they get bigger, I pop a cube of brine shrimp and a cube of the Repashy Spawn and Grow, and they're good for all day, So they have food to scavenge all day. My 2 rainbow fry, they were quite big before I even realized they were in the tank because they weren't intentionally bred. They were byproduct of having rainbow fish in quarantine for a few months and then moving them out of quarantine and then having fry, which I guess is how you intentionally spawn rainbows. But they just ate microworms right away, so they weren't so small that they needed something like smaller or bigger. I've had vinegar eels a long time ago when I raised betta fry, and those are really tiny. I don't think any of my fish need that small of a food. And vinegar eels are super easy. Like collecting them, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do it, and that can be a little bit of a hassle. But like you could literally have a vinegar eel culture just forgotten in a cupboard for like 6 months and probably pull it out and it'd still be fine. And not smell. And just smell like apple cider vinegar. The worst thing that could happen is if, unbeknownst to you, someone came to your house and needed some apple cider vinegar and thought your vinegar ale culture was just apple cider vinegar. And that could be gross. But those live food cultures are, are some of the simple ones. I've had Daphnia in the past. The only time I had really successful Daphnia culture, I had it in a big tub outside on a east-facing wall. So it got really bright morning sun and then not a lot in the afternoon. And it was a old 55-gallon aquarium that I just threw a bunch of leaf litter in and then let that get green watered and just full of mulm, had an aeration stone in there, and then after a few months dumped a Daphnia culture in, and then a few weeks later just started scooping them out by the net full. And it was great. The fish loved it. I had all sorts of fish at that time, rams and cories and everything. Everyone loved that. But the problem with that culture is I never had the crash that a lot of people have issues with. I had mosquitoes get into it, and then that was just a mess. Because then I had actual mosquito larvae, which in theory it could have fed a fish, but if it hatches in your house, then you have mosquitoes in your house. And I'm very, very allergic to mosquito bites. Even just the mosquitoes, like just the mosquito larvae caused issues. What do you want, kitty cat? So I ended up feeding a bunch out of it and then nuking the whole thing with a gallon of bleach to get rid of the mosquitoes because didn't want mosquitoes around the house. Not when we, and this was like in California, right when there was all the mosquito transmitted diseases becoming really a big deal. What was that? I can't remember which epidemic it was at the time, but it was a problem. So generally, if I'm not feeding dry or live, then I get to frozen food. I did not pull my frozen food out of the freezer for you guys. Sorry. But I feed, like I said, the baby brine shrimp to baby fish and small fish because the cardinal tetras, all the tetras love it because it breaks up and it gets in the water volume and it stays there for a while. So if I throw it in the 75, the circulation pump will move it around for quite a long time. So the cardinals really, and the cardinals and the rummy-nose and the Rossbora really, really are excited about that. I also feed regular brine shrimp, so just larger brine shrimp, and bloodworms. Now, ironically, if you get the big juicy bloodworms, they're kind of too big for a bunch of my fish. So what I end up doing is I have to take my a mallet and I whack the cubes until they break into little pieces, and it kind of like chops up the bloodworms so that like the cardinals could eat one, because otherwise you have this cardinal fish that's like, say, this big, and it's got this worm sticking out of its mouth as it's trying to chew it and digest it all at once. So they want them, they're just kind of big for them. So I chop those up, and that helps, and the cichlids like them, and again, the different size cichlids like that. So one of the things that we don't often talk about, I think, when we're talking about fish food is getting everyone adequately fed in a tank, right? Because, like, I mean, if you have high prey-dry fish, like, so in my 75, when I had the rainbows and the cories and the slow bottom dwellers, it worked sort of because I'd have to feed a lot because the rainbows would just attack all the food. The tetras often were the ones that weren't getting enough food because they're timid feeders. And the rainbows would get all the food, and the tetras wanted food that's in the water column, but they're scared to go out in the open to get it. And so they were often the hardest to get fed, because everyone else, it's like once it sinks to the bottom, they don't care. And so then the bottom feeders and my slow out and the off-flocks grazers and those sort of fish could easily get to that as they wanted. Maybe the only exception to that is the zucchini, because I've seen the tetras come down and nibble at zucchini, but it's like very you have to be careful and then not move too much, because they really are a pretty timid fish. So they'll come out and investigate something like that that's been there a while. That said, I've not seen them eat any of the Repashy that I've put in there. I don't even think they realize that there's food there. Because if, let's see, there, this shoulder. So if I put, like, the cardinals live in that quadrant of the tank, and the Repashy usually falls in this middle area, and they just don't see it. It doesn't register to them as like food in the water column. So, when there were the rainbows in there, that made it hard to always make sure that the cardinals got enough food, and so then it leads to a little bit of overfeeding. But at the time, it wasn't too bad, because if it made it past the rainbows in the top and the tetras in the middle, then it would get cleaned up by the bottom crew. Right now, since I don't have that top crew anymore, that top feeders, those fast feeders, the cardinals get to eat, but it's still like if it's gone through the water column and it's sunk to the bottom, they just ignore it. So, and then they don't go to the top to eat. They just don't. I'm sure there's some people out there that cardinals do, but my cardinals don't. So if it sinks to the bottom, then it's just Cory and Pleco and Loach food, which is fine. They need that. But I've noticed. So I used to feed that tank. I have a dedicated teaspoon measure for the fish tank. I used to feed it 1 teaspoon of the small food mix that I make up of those different dry foods, and then a teaspoon of bottom food. And I've had to remind myself that there's not as many fish in there because, well, I've gotten more snails now. Because if you feed too much, then your snail population grows to accommodate the food source. And now I don't mind snails, but when they get to the food faster than the Cory fry do, then I start to be like, okay, I need to cut back a little so that the fish are eating the most of the food and there's only a little snail population left over. Or I need to keep feeding heavy and buy myself a puffer fish so I can feed the snails to something. But, so yeah, so now when I feed like a quarter. I just do a little tipful of dry and then a tablespoon of bottom feeder. And now a tablespoon of bottom feeder sounds like a lot. Okay, so here's that. It's eight tablets. Whoop. Left is right. I can remember this. So it's 8 tablets of the sinking pellet food. And sometimes I don't feed all of that many. I go for I was feeding 6 to 8 before, so it's like I just scoop out a bunch and put that in there. I just lost one on the floor. So if I'm feeding, if I was to feed the small granules, obviously I would do a lot less because it's much more compact, right? So like in a teaspoon, only so many tablets can kind of stack in there, where if it's a pellet mix or it's a really small fine food, it's going to, be much more congested. So I definitely, take that into account when I'm using the scoop. It's just that a lot of times if I try to use my fingers are a little wet, the food sticks to them, and that's just a pain. Or I'm actually allergic to yeast, and yeast is a main ingredient in most fish foods. Brewer yeast is in there. So it's just like I try to avoid getting them on my skin. Don't ask me to eat my fish food. I'm not going to. It's not worth the results that would happen. Day on heavy doses of Benadryl would not be enjoyable for me. That said, my bird really likes the fish food. He gets really excited whenever I let him have a bite, which I think birds and eating seafood is weird. But hey, if he wants it, he can have some. And then the last thing, so we've talked about dry, we've talked about frozen, we've talked about live. The last type of food, really, the last category of food there is freeze-dried. And now, I got in the habit of really not feeding a lot of freeze-dried back when I kept betas, because it was, and now this was late 90s, early 2000s, and they said that feeding freeze-dried bloodworms would often cause swim bladder issues, or like constipation and swim bladder issues, and so it was just best to just feed frozen. And I had enough at the time that frozen was just easy enough. You just defrost a cube and then feed, 3 little worms to each fish, and then on the days you didn't feed that, you get the small cichlid pellets or the beta floating bites. Let me grab the new Spectrum one. If this doesn't mean I should buy a beta, I don't know what does. I have this whole little tub of food specifically designed for betas. So there's New Spectrum has a beta formula. It's a 1 millimeter semi-floating pellet, so it does stay at the top, but it does eventually sink if it's in there long enough. So it's in the water column where the betas want to eat it and might notice it. And my betas have always really loved it, of this food, and of course they love frozen. And my last beta absolutely adored when I fed live food. He loved those white worms. But, I mix this in, like, my rainbows could have ate this, except it's a little big for them. Again, no, that's not too bad. It's funny, though, that the 1 millimeter beta food is almost the same size as the 0.5 millimeter grow food in the last, the last one I bought. So that's where I was like, okay, this food, like the grow food, has gotten way bigger than it used to be. So I order, most of my food from Aquarium Co-op, although my local fish store here, finally, I moved to Vegas, I finally have one more, does have the New Life Spectrum. It does have the Repashy. It has, I think it has the Fluval Bug Bites, actually. But they're where I bought these algae wafers, because I couldn't find them online, because before that I'd been buying through a wholesale resale place, and they'd been out and out and out. So, this was $23.79 at Trop Aquarium in Las Vegas. And so it is nice to have a local fish store handy that does have these high-end foods, so that, if I completely ran out, which I'm not going to, I have like 3 of these that are full now, and, so I kind of stock up when I order. If I was to run out, I could just run to the fish store and get some. So the other thing I have gotten from Aquarium Co-op is their freeze-dried, and they the fish like them, and I haven't seen any negative results. So the reason I hadn't fed freeze-dried in a really long time was that the beta people were always saying that was bad for the fish, or it could cause problems. So in my current mix of food, I feed the 75. It looks like it's all bloodworms, but you can see it's a mix of pellets and bloodworms. So it's got the couple different of the micro pellets, but mostly the tropical bug bites, and then it has the bloodworms in there. I got down to the last of the bags. So I was like, just put the rest of it in. The freeze-dried brine shrimp for those who haven't ordered this or haven't, have thought about it but don't know what it's going to look like, it actually comes in like little freeze-dried cubes, which would be awesome for if you were trying to feed larger fish, but you wanted like a high-protein snack for like an Oscar or something, because they just chomp that whole thing down. No, I mean, it's good. You can crumble it up really easy. So it's not like you can't use it for smaller fish, but it's harder to mix in because, like I said, I kind of make these mixes up. I don't just feed one thing every day. So, I mean, even on days when they're just getting their quote-unquote dry mix, they're getting 3 or 4 different foods to choose from, all, good quality. So the freeze-dried cubes of the brine shrimp are just a little bit more difficult because I have to, like, think about feeding that specifically because I have to break them all up and then put them in the tanks. I'm sure the fish would love them, but I just haven't used them much. But I could see, like, because it says like live bears or goldfish or angelfish, cichlids. I can imagine like angelfish and cichlids picking at them. Just not so much my particular type of cichlids. Although maybe the pearlies, because the pearlies they just eat so different than the Maltese and the shell dwellers. Same with the Julies. They eat more like a tetra, in the like kind of shy behavior, doesn't go to the soil to look at food, looking for food right in front of their face, but won't go to the top. The pearly ocellatus, they're the strangest because if I walk up to the tank, they all come up to the top to feed. And if I walk up to the tank of the Maltese, they come out and they look, but they still stay at the bottom. But the pearlies come all the way to the top. So they really have been liking those freeze-dried bloodworms because they'll pick off the top. So, like I said, each fish feeds differently, and getting that different, getting the right foods for them is important. But it's also learning how your fish feed, because you can. I mean, honestly, I could literally just feed this to every fish in my fish tank. Just like Lucas from L.R. Brett's feeds just the Tropica granules, color granules. Like you can make one fish food work for everybody, but I do like some variety. Well, I'm glad you made it safely to your office, HC Aqua. Hopefully you don't have to go back to work. And I'm bummed. I'm actually pretty excited. My next year's work schedule will allow me to be a little bit more available in the evenings. Although it does mean I have an 8 a.m. class a couple days a week instead of these 1 to 10 p.m. shifts you're working right now. Oh, I miss jobs where you could just work, quote unquote. Something about coming into class and not having anything to teach students. They frown upon that. But I remember the days when I could live stream or have audio playing in my ear while I just entered paperwork. Oh, the days of just being a paper pusher. Kind of miss them sometimes. So do you guys have any questions about feeding in particular, or just, if I was to give a piece of advice, it's like use a good variety and buy the best quality stuff. Like, I mean, your fish can survive on Walmart flakes, but they're probably going to die sooner of some sort of illness of malnutrition. Where if you're feeding a high quality, like if I never fed live or frozen, I know that the dry food I'm feeding is quality enough. I mean, it might be like the equivalent of eating protein bars instead of steak and potatoes, but it is quality. Come here, ducky. You come meet the people. Come meet the people. So, I know you guys always hear him during my videos, because if I'm talking, he's talking. But I thought you'd like to meet the other non-aquatic pet. Say hello. He doesn't say hello. He says, hey, ducky. Can you say, hey, ducky? Now you're really shy? He has to be supervised in front of the computer, though. Because if he's not, he pulls keys off. My old laptop, he was just a baby then. He pulled, like, the F10 key off in, like, 2 seconds. And then, like, ruined it, so you couldn't replace it. Do you see yourself in the window? Yeah. Who's the pretty birdie? So this is the other non-aquatic pet. No, you're not getting on the computer. No. Well, biting me is not going to sway me to your wishes. No, it's not. Silly bird. Yes, birds are destructive. Out there, he's happy in that position. He can stay out a while. He likes to sit like in my hand, cupped like this, like I'm a recliner. You know, he's a pretty good bird. He doesn't get out as much as he'd like, and some of that's my new work schedule, and some of that's that there's a cat that wants to eat him because she's now sitting on the floor staring at us. But he's good. I mean, you should see what he does to his toys. They're very destroyed, you know. But then we buy toys specifically to shred and specifically to chew on. But you feel unloved. You're not getting any attention. So he's a good birdie. He's how old are you now? 4 years old. So he's got another good 10 years in him of crankiness. You know, that hurts. Why are you being such a naughty bird? Because I want down. Go put you back. We need to find somewhere to get your nails done. But he's just as spoiled as all of my other pets, because he has 2 bird cages because he has to sleep in my room with me. He doesn't like it if I'm not in there. So he goes up and down the house twice a day. And then he'll sit on my shoulder while I do fish maintenance. He likes the sound of water running. He'll sing when the water's running. So he's always enjoys water change day. But I know you guys hear him because when I play back the videos to proof them, he'll talk to himself chatting in the background, you know, like his little twitterings. So that's always really funny. So I figured you guys might like to see the creature that is creating that noise in the back. And of course you've met the kitty last week, who's being camera shy, but she's hiding behind the computer. So hopefully by next week, we will have some new shrimp and snails and fun critters to look at. I'm super bummed today that they did not make it. I'm really just frustrated with the post office because, like, I realized that the address was wrong. They sent out, this is an incorrect address, you know, undeliverable. And I called in within an hour of that to request a change of address and a hold at the post office, and they don't even look at that stuff and they just ship it back off. Not to mention, if it was on the truck and it's like 1 digit off and the postman's has a stack of other mail with my name on it, I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not like I was like, the street name was wrong or the zip code and it was in a whole different country, you know, or a state. Like, it was literally just 1 digit off. So I ordered some mystery snails, which I haven't had in years. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. They're just being jerks and like lazy, you know. And then that they don't even hold it overnight in their warehouse before they start shipping it back to the sender. Which I guess, if it was a pair of shoes, I wouldn't care. Like, I did get them eventually, but it's a live animal in there, and I feel really bad. But I ordered some mystery snails because I want to get them going. I'm going to put them in the 55 with the Pearly Ocellatus because snails live with them fine. And then I got some pumpkin shrimp because they were on sale. Not because I really wanted orange shrimp, because they were on sale. And I also got some of the Bloody Mary reds. So I didn't want just standard cherry shrimp. I wanted the ones that are the red body and then the shells are clear. And those are going to go into the little 5-gallon, the half 10. And then the orange are going to go into the 10-gallon with the oldest Cory Fry and the Rainbow Fry. And hopefully, this is going to be my third attempt at having shrimp, and hopefully the third time's the charm. Now, this has not been like a consecutive, like, oh, I get shrimp and they die, and I get more shrimp and they die. Like, this is like, I tried shrimp in like the 90s, and then I tried shrimp like when they first came, like when the nano shrimp, the Neocaridinus first came onto the market. I tried some, and they all died. And then I tried some about 5 years ago, and I think they had that little, like those fungus things, but you can't really see without a magnifying glass. Oh no, the audio's skipping. Oh dear, I don't know how to fix it. But like some of those micro shrimp issues that you just don't know about, and I didn't know enough. So then I'd had like one cherry shrimp for like 3 years, and then it finally died because one cherry shrimp does not reproduce. And it lived with my beta for ages, and then I finally lost the one cherry shrimp, and so then I'm like, okay, I'm going to try again now that I live somewhere with hard water. So I went to somewhere reputable. I live in hard water, so they should have plenty of calcium, and I shouldn't have to worry about because before my TDS was like under 100, so it was like I had a supplement. So yeah, I ordered mystery snails and some high grade orange shrimp, and then the Bloody Mary shrimp are arguably not the same thing as cherry shrimp because their skin is where the pigment is instead of their shell. Oh no, that's too bad. I'm sorry your mystery snails died. So the last time I bought mystery snails, like granted it was at like PetSmart, they had leeches. So evidently the mystery snails, the leeches don't bother them, but they can carry them, like they can live up in their shell, and then you infect your aquarium with them. So I've been really hesitant to buy mystery snails since then because I didn't want to bring anything nasty in. But I know Flip Aquatics quarantines everything, and I would assume would not sell something that was carrying leeches. Let's hope not. But I've been wanting some mystery snails for a while. I'd love to get like true apple snails, the ones that get like to like the softball size, but they're illegal in like all the states. So I mean, and I don't have a tank quite big enough. That they were really be better off in a big pond. But if you watched my video I posted last night, I also set up a new 5-gallon aquarium. Some of the really big apple snails do eat live plants. I think there's a couple that don't though. But I could live with that if I had a koi pond and had some apple snails. Like they could just eat my duckweed. I mean, I'm all for anything that'll eat my duckweed. I was actually I was thinking to myself, could I put a goldfish in with my Pearly ocellatus to get rid of this duckweed? And I was like, it's really not the correct way to keep either of those fish. But it's tempting just because I want to get rid of duckweed so badly. It's getting in everything. And once it spreads, it's impossible. I think if I was to do something like that, because I've seen, yeah, the goldfish really do take care of it. There's a couple like algae eating cichlids that I've been told might, like the Tropheus, I think. But it's like mixing Tropheus and Pearly ocellatus is just as taboo as putting a goldfish in with my Pearly ocellatus. All right, Gina. Well, hopefully you can catch it later. I'm trying, but there's unfortunately not a whole lot I can do about internet lag. I tried to reduce the size that I'm streaming, and it's still not helping a whole lot. Yeah, so I don't know, like, I probably get, like, stoned via internet if I put a goldfish in with the cichlids, but then I've seen, like, Corey do it, because he'll move a goldfish around his, fish room to take care of duckweed, so it's in with all sorts of different, fish. It's just that, like, I keep that tank at, like, 74 to 76, and that's kind of top range for goldfish, so it wouldn't be ideal for if I drop the temperature for one or raise it for the other. It's just probably not going to happen, but I've been tempted. But then I'm like, then I'd get like to the point where I'd want like 30 goldfish. So let's probably not start there because I need lots of tank space. And there's, like I said before, there's a new 5-gallon in my life, or it's a new old 5-gallon. Planted little tank going on that will eventually hopefully get some microfish to quarantine or some fish for the 75 to quarantine. I know 5.5 is a pretty small quarantine volume, but a lot of times I'm buy fish and they're like so tiny that I actually quarantined those 25 cardinals. I quarantined them in the 5.5. And they lived in there for a good 6 months before I moved them over, and they got nice and big. Like they grew happily in the little tank. But they, one thing that's nice about feeding that smaller volume is that you're knowing that they're getting the food, and it's located in a place where it's super easy to do a water change on it because it's right at the kitchen counter, so I can just top them off. I actually did that with like the spray hose from the sink this morning. Like I just topped all the tanks off. So it looks cute actually because I can't remember. I filmed the last video twice, the fish room update, and I can't remember if I had planted the plants in the one that I posted or if I hadn't. I can't remember if I did that before or after the video got filmed, but I've rearranged, like at first I just threw pots in, and now I've kind of rearranged them, and the tank looks really cute. The half-high 10 or 5-gallon aquarium definitely needs some more aquascaping help. But I think part of that's going to be waiting for for me to find the foreground plant that I want, and then probably moving plants around as needed. But the plants are in there, and it's completely cycled itself back, which, I mean, doesn't surprise me. The tank was cycled, but that substrate adds a lot of ammonia, so it could have spiked. It did have a very tiny spike, but it was like within 6 hours of adding the soil, there was just trace ammonia left, and the next day there was none. So like just 12 hours later, all the ammonia was gone. So I've seen no ill effect on I think there's 4 Corey Fry still in there, keeping things rolling. So that one, the other 5-gallon, it's definitely going through a cycle, which I could probably speed up by adding more cycled media to the hang on the back, but I haven't yet because I don't have fish to put in there. and I have time, so like it's not a big deal if the tank needs to spend a week or two cycling. But it's already like it has ammonia, and the ammonia is going down and the nitrite's going up, and trace nitrates. So it's mid-cycle already. So that's like I was talking in my video a couple weeks ago about being prepared for setting up an emergency tank. Even if I had fish in there, they're not near as detrimental if you were fish in cycling. In like the traditional way where it's like going to take a month and a half for your tank to cycle, and meanwhile you're killing your fish with toxins. This should be probably cycled by the end of the week, and so that's like 7 days, maybe 10 days on the long end. And like I said, I could have sped that up more by putting any media in the HOV because that's just the hang on the back's just empty. But yeah, I could have just put sponge and bio rings in there from the other tanks, and it probably would be instantly cycled as well. The nice thing about that is I was a little worried that if I moved cycled material in there and then I don't have any fish for a while, that it would, like, I would lose my cycle. And so then Corvus and Corey were talking about that, I think, on the last podcast, about how long a cycle will hold without fish. And they said, several weeks easily. And so that's good to know. But it's also nice that with the substrate adding ammonia and settling and cycling, how that substrate does is that this tank is actually holding its cycle by having to kind of recycle itself. And so when I'm ready for it, it should be good to go, but I'm not going to have to worry about it, like good bacteria dying off why I haven't even ordered fish yet. Although maybe I will do that soon. But this time I will make sure it's my correct address. Because, I know Rob will make this right, but at the same time, he shouldn't have to because it's totally on me. Like, if he does anything other than, like, I don't know. In all honesty, he shouldn't have to do anything. I put in my wrong address. But I know, he's an awesome guy, and I'm so excited I finally got to order from him because I've been wanting to for ages. So I finally figured out how I could get myself some shrimpies. And since they'll be nice and quarantined and healthy, hopefully they'll live happy and healthy in my tanks that have been set up for a while. Because I know they like pretty mature tanks. They don't do well with any sort of cycling. So that's why I wouldn't put them in the other 5-gallon I just set up, because that one hasn't been running long enough. I had thought about putting the orange in the 75, but there is that Epistogramma in there. And now there's only one Epistogramma, and it's a huge tank, so like there's, in theory, enough space for her not to hunt down every shrimp. But, when you have a few $100s of shrimp coming, you don't necessarily want to gamble on a really expensive lunch for your Epistogramma. So I'm going to maybe, hopefully, once they start breeding so rapidly that I can move a group into the 10-gallon or the 75 and see how that works, then I might do something. But I'm not going to just throw fish in there and hope for the best. But it looks like I've been on for a little over an hour here, so I'm going to get going and do some more chores today and get my tanks water changes and stuff. And I got a bunch of errands to run. So it was good chatting with you guys and talking, and leave any questions in the comment box below if you have any other questions on follow-up on food or how I feed. But I think I covered the main types of food and how I use them and about how often I feed. I think the last tip would be, if you're going to feed something really messy, feed it the day before you do your water change, so that you don't have to have that sitting in there and causing problems in your filter. All right, guys, it was really good hanging out, and I'll catch you all on the next video or in a live stream. Bye.